I never wanted to have a 3D printer, and now I have one. At least a box full of parts. Yeah, you're probably wondering why I got a box full of 3D printed parts if I really didn't want one. And it's because of this. This is my first attempt at making a bracket for the Daytona Velona 2 speedometer. And I spent a whole summer afternoon building it, and I felt very smart about the process. But when I was finally done and tried to mount it, it didn't fit. Looking at my failed process of making the bracket made me reconsider all of my prejudices I had about 3D printing. I used to think that it was for nerds who like to build 3D printers, dabble with the software and the adjustment of the printer until the layer structure of these tiny plastic boats everyone prints is perfect. And that wasn't me until I made this bracket. And now I'm standing in front of a box full of 3D printed parts and got no idea. Assembling the base of the printer wasn't too hard, but then I had to find the Z-axis limit switch without even knowing what I was looking for, and then figure out how to install it. Z-axis limit switch installed. Some magic potion, and then it's time to put together all the big pieces. Nice. This was such a lucky buy. Like, for now, I don't know if it actually works, but all of the things are pre-assembled and it looks as if the guy knew what he was doing, because this one has all the fancy upgrades and stuff like that. And like this, I paid less than the base model would cost. The one thing is that I don't really get to understand, but for now it's nice to have it almost plug and play and ready to go. But the big question was, would it work? Well, good news, it works. So everything is on. Now I guess I somehow need to connect it to my computer, design something, and see if it actually prints. I've got no idea, but we'll see. I honestly didn't know anything about 3D printing at that point. I actually thought that I would need to connect my computer with a cable to the printer in order to print something. But after consulting Google, it actually turns out that you need Cura, which is a slicing software. So once you have your design, it needs to be sliced in horizontal layers, and that's the software for that. And now I want to print a bad leveling X, which you can get from Thingiverse, which is an open library of 3D designs. Problem is that it says unable to slice. Now I need to figure out what the problem is. I ordered some filament for a future project, which is in here. So now I need to figure out how I can insert this filament into the software, and I hope that resolves the problem. I found some recommended settings from this blog, all 3DP, and now we need to figure out how to put them into Cura. So these all the different settings that you can adjust. So it turned out that Pad G wasn't the best choice as a first filament. I didn't know that there were filaments that were easier to print than others, and Pad G turned out to be rather difficult to print, at least for someone like me who never 3D printed in his life before. So I decided to make my life a bit easier. I ordered some new filament, which now is PLA. This should be easier to print. Speaking of printing, I still hadn't figured out the Cura problem. Do you remember? The one that said unable to slice. So it took me a while, but after a few YouTube tutorials and Reddit posts, I figured out that Cura thinks that the build plate of my printer is smaller than it actually is. We have now updated all the recommended settings in Cura. It was able to slice, so there's no error or anything like that. Now I'm gonna save it to an SD card and then see how I can put it into the printer and print it. For some reason, it doesn't recognize the SD card. It would have been too easy, so let's try a new one. And let's see if it works like this. Nope. Alright, so we turn it off. Nope. Alright, troubleshooting now. Apparently that's relatively common issue with these Ender 3s. There is a workaround apparently that includes the Raspberry Pi and Octoprint. It's getting kind of complicated with this one. At this point I was ready to call it a day. I got tired, it was almost midnight, and that's when things normally go wrong for me. But couldn't help it, but I had to do some research. So apparently the printers are pretty picky when it comes to which SD cards they can read. For some reason I thought the bigger the SD card, the better. But That's absolutely not the case. I've tossed this one away once I unpacked this one because I thought, who in the world would use an 8 GB SD card? But that's the one we should use. So let's put this in here. And now it recognizes it. Crazy. How simple, but yet how complicated can it be? Can't imagine how well I slept after that was figured out. The next morning I got up super motivated to do the bed leveling, something I actually was dreading because a lot of tutorials make it sound kind of difficult, but what happened on the first try didn't increase my confidence. Well, apparently it's not the best idea to try leveling your bed without the build plate installed, but at some point I finally got it. It took quite a while. First I had to manually level the bed. That means you move this one from corner to corner to corner to corner and then adjust the height until a piece of paper just barely moves underneath. Now I have the bed leveling X file on there and it's about to start the first print. The PLA is loaded. That was no issue at all. I'm just like constantly trying out how to get it to work. Now the problem is that the distance from the nozzle to the bed, I've set it a few times and whenever I start printing, it's like too high. I don't know what's wrong. So I think what we need to do is go to bed now. I'm gonna do that tomorrow, see if it works. Alright, good morning. First things first, let's see if we can level the bed. So there are two things that I figured out while watching a few videos. First we need to preheat the bed and then we try the BearTouch bed leveling. If that doesn't work, we can actually print the first layer and adjust the bed while it's printing until the material actually sticks to the surface. The bed is now leveled with a BearTouch. It still doesn't work. This literally drove me crazy. You can't imagine how much time I've spent trying to level the bed, and I spent even more time researching how to do it until I finally found out that you can actually adjust the Z level offset because this is way too high. There we go. It finally stuck to the bed. It was still a bit high in some areas, so the first try turned out like this, but when I used the manual adjustment wheels, I eventually got it so level that it's working. Not perfect, because it still has a few hiccups. But that had to be good enough because I just couldn't wait to print my first real part. And the speedo bracket felt a bit too ambitious because I had no idea about 3D modeling. So I learned the basics of Fusion 360 and decided to go for a very simple brake fluid reservoir bracket. So this is the first part on here. Let's see if it prints. Oh, very successful, I would say. I thought it was all set, but I guess it wasn't. And thanks to my friend Lucas, thank you if you're watching this, I learned about the glue stick trick. It always has little problems in the beginning, but finally it worked. So I spent the next 23 minutes sitting next to the 3D printer, staring at the build plate, fascinated by how the 3D printer builds the bracket layer by layer until we're done. Right, I'm gonna see how it fits. Nice. Could actually make it a little bit smaller. The bracket didn't quite fit as I wanted, so I had to make a few adjustments just to make this kind of stick out a little bit more and then make this a little shorter and find a solution for the screws so that they fit in better. I'm also thinking about maybe taking away some of the material here, just make some triangles or something like that in there so that it's not so bulky like it's now. I took some measurements, made some marks and had to learn a few more basic functions of Fusion 360 to make this version where I cut a bit off. And then I had to extend the top bit right here and I tried to make it look like this bit to make it less bulky. I cut out a few pieces right here. So let's print it, see if it turns out any better than this one and maybe we have a proper working prototype. There we go. Let's drill the holes out and see how it fits on the bike. Look at the difference. I mean, like, I'm so happy with the new one compared to the old bulky one. So with the new one, I actually made these little holes for the screws so they fit much tighter in there and don't stick out too much. Let's see how it fits. Look at that. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's so much nicer than the last part. And I actually really like how this aligns. I could actually leave it like this, but I don't know how long the plastic would last, so I think I'm better off building it from carbon fiber. That's gonna be interesting. So the future plan is to print a mold for this and build it out of carbon fiber, but that's for the future. I hope you didn't mind the different styles in this video, because I never really intended to make this video, so it's all over the place, but I've learned so much that I thought would be nice to share. And I can tell you, once you have a 3D printer, you change how you see the world. You start to see 3D printing options everywhere, from bike parts to stuff that you need at your home. And I guess I've started to turn a bit into a 3D printing nerd myself, but that's actually good, because I can tell you that if you build a custom bike, getting a 3D printer is one of the best things that you can do. You have so many options to build different prototypes, change stuff super quickly, and to make the start easier for you, I've put together a blog post where I've basically selected all the little bits of the tutorials that have helped me to set up the 3D printer properly, and not like you've seen in this video, but properly. So I can actually set the printer to start printing and leave the room without having to put on glue stick or adjusting the bed manually or stuff like that. So if you want to check that out, I'm gonna link it down below. And if you like this video, you'll also enjoy that one. So see you over there.